Sophia sat in the dim glow of the cafe's corner, the warm cup of coffee in her hands, offering little comfort. The city outside was bustling, but she had long since learned to tune out the noise. It was the quiet moments that always found their way, and those were the ones that reminded her of the things she couldn't escape. And tonight, the quiet was filled with memories of Adrian. It had been 3 years since they last spoke. 3 years since their love had collapsed under the weight of unspoken words, miscommunication, and stubborn pride. Yet, no matter how hard she tried to bury it, the memory of him still lingered. The way he had touched her hand like it was a secret he didn't want anyone to know. The way his eyes had softened when he'd whispered her name in the middle of the night, and the sound of his laugh that had made her heart skip. She had loved him with everything she had, and it hadn't been enough. Sophia's gaze fell to the crumpled piece of paper in front of her, a letter she had written to Adrian more times than she could count, but had never sent. It was always the same, a confession of all the things she had never said. She had once convinced herself that writing it was enough, that somehow, that would be her catharsis. But she knew deep down that it never had been. The words were still inside her, still caught between her ribs, waiting for the moment when she could finally let them go. But that moment never seemed to come. Instead, she folded the letter and placed it into her bag, making a mental note to burn it later, to let the past go. But life, as it often does, had other plans. It had been months since Sophia had stepped foot in the cafe. Tonight, it felt like the familiar atmosphere would provide the comfort she needed to finish her latest project and ease her mind. She hadn't expected the world to shift when the door swung open, bringing with it the scent of rain and a wave of familiarity. And then, there he was, Adrian. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to stop moving. His gaze swept across the room, and for one agonizing moment, their eyes locked. His face hadn't changed much, still the same sharp jawline, the same tousled dark hair, though now he wore a slight shadow of weariness under his eyes. But it was the way his presence filled the room that hit Sophia hardest. It was as if the years hadn't passed at all, as if they had never been apart. She stood frozen, unable to decide if she should run, pretend she hadn't seen him, or speak. She hadn't planned on this. She hadn't planned on him. Adrian hesitated for a moment, as if unsure whether to approach her, before his feet moved toward her, almost instinctively. He stopped just short of her table, his lips parting as if he had 100 things to say, but no words to form them. "Hi," he said, his voice a mix of disbelief and familiarity. Sophia felt her heart race in response. It had been 3 years, but the sound of his voice still sent a familiar shiver down her spine. "Hi," she whispered, almost as if the word had no meaning after so much time apart. Her throat felt tight, and for a moment, she considered running from the room, running from the past that had always felt like a weight on her chest. Instead, she sat still, meeting his gaze, as if daring herself to confront the feelings she had buried for so long. "I didn't expect to see you here," Adrian said, his hands nervously adjusting the strap of his bag. Are you okay?" Sophia's lips pressed into a tight line as she nodded, but inside, she was anything but okay. Her mind was a whirl of emotions, anger, longing, pain, and something deeper that she didn't have the courage to name yet. But she had made a promise to herself years ago, no more running. "I'm okay," she said, her voice sounding more certain than she felt, "just working." "You know, life goes on," he nodded, the familiar pain flashing in his eyes for a moment before he masked it with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I didn't mean to come across like I was avoiding you before," Adrian said, almost apologetically. "I just needed some time to figure things out. Time to think. I don't know if you ever got that." Sophia blinked, the sudden flood of memories overwhelming her. The unfinished conversations, the things they had never said, the way Adrian had left quietly, almost without a word, as if everything they had built had been too fragile to survive the weight of the world outside. "I didn't need you to figure things out, Adrian," she said quietly, her voice low but steady. "I needed you to be there, when it mattered." Her words hung between them, raw and unspoken. Adrian flinched, his face softening as if he had taken the weight of the words on his own shoulders. "I know," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "I should have been, and I hate myself for not being." For a long moment, the two of them just stood there, the years between them stretching out like an invisible wall neither of them could tear down. But Sophia felt something stir deep within her, something she hadn't felt in so long, a flicker of hope. She didn't know what this moment was. Was it closure? Was it a new beginning? Was it simply a rekindling of old wounds? All she knew was that she couldn't walk away from this, not from him, not from the part of herself that still loved him. "I don't know why you're here," Sophia said, her voice finally steady, though her heart beat faster with every word. "But I can't pretend like nothing happened. I can't just act like you walking out of my life didn't tear everything apart. I don't know if you realize that, Adrian." He closed his eyes, guilt and regret clouding his features. When he opened them again, his expression was more vulnerable than she had ever seen it. "I realize it now," he said, voice hoarse. "I wasn't ready then. But I think I'm ready now. I don't know if I can fix what I broke, but I'm willing to try." Sophia looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the man who had once loved her with a ferocity she had never quite understood. She saw the person who had walked away, leaving her to pick up the pieces of a shattered heart. And yet, she saw the possibility of something else, something different. It wasn't forgiveness she felt, not yet, not completely, but it was something close. And in that moment, Sophia realized that perhaps the story between them had never truly ended. The rest of the evening was spent talking, slowly and carefully, as if they were tiptoeing through the wreckage of their past. Neither of them knew where it would lead, but the old spark, the one they had once shared so effortlessly, was still there. It simmered beneath the surface, unspoken but undeniable. As the cafe began to empty out, Adrian took a deep breath. Do you think we could try again?" Sophia didn't answer immediately. She could feel the years pressing down on her, the pain, the unanswered questions. But there was something in Adrian's eyes that made her believe he wasn't asking lightly. He wasn't asking for the sake of nostalgia or a passing desire. He was asking because, like her, he had never stopped caring. And maybe, just maybe, they had both grown enough to try again. "I don't know," Sophia said quietly, her gaze never leaving his. "But I'm willing to find out, together." And with that, the past they thought they had buried began to bloom again, fragile and beautiful. The pages that had once been torn from their story could be rewritten, one moment at a time. This story is about rediscovery, about love that never quite disappears, and the courage it takes to face the pain of the past in order to embrace the potential of the future. It's a story for those who know the ache of unspoken words, the longing for a lost love, and the hope that sometimes second chances are possible.